Good morning to this second out of third days for HC Andersen's virtual Nordic Growth Days. Welcome everybody. The first presenter today is Aaron Wong from NeoDynamics, medtech company based in Sweden. And for the audience, please post questions during the presentation and I will forward them to Aaron. The session will last for 20 minutes presentation and 5 minutes for Q&A. Welcome, Aaron. Please carry on.
Hi, good morning, class. Thank you very much. Yes, this morning I'd like to introduce NeoDynamics. I'm Aaron Wong, the CFO of NeoDynamics. And to start with an executive summary of the company. NeoDynamics are a Swedish medtech company listed on the Nasdaq First North Stock Exchange, and our headquarters are in Stockholm. And we specialize in the development of an innovative way to biopsy suspected breast cancer. This year in September, we received FDA approval in the US to commercialize our product, which is very exciting. We're very much looking forward to that. And besides breast cancer, we have other indications that we are looking to, for example, prostate cancer. And the company has a small but strong and experienced team. A short overview of the history of NeoDynamics. So the patented technology, the pulse technology, was invented at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden, which is quite a prestigious university hospital here in Stockholm. And shortly after that, NeoDynamics was founded in 2012. In 2016, the first generation of the product was CE marked, and then clinical studies started in 2017. In order to raise capital for ongoing R&D and improvements in the product, the company was listed in 2018 on the Spotlight Stock Exchange in Stockholm, and thereafter the second generation of the Pulse platform was developed. It was kind of unfortunate that in 2019 we saw the outbreak of COVID, which restricted the launch in Europe, as many of our accounts were unable to actually go in and demo the product to clinicians. And that lasted for a few years. And then in 2022, we actually uplisted to Nasdaq First North. And the reason we did that was because Nasdaq has a more broader platform for investors overseas, specifically in the US, where we received our FDA clearance. And we've been working hard in the fourth quarter to soft launch the US, and we expect it to kind of go full speed in January. So the value proposition of the technology and the product itself, and this goes for both clinicians and patients, is that with the Pulse technology, we get much better control of the needle when we come to biopsy suspected breast cancer, which means that we have better precision. We also can have larger tissue yield. And with the 3 needles that we have to biopsy, we have a system that is very intuitive and very easy. And as I said, with the 3 needles, we can approach a wide range of lesions in different parts of the breast and axilla. There's less need for surgery. I mean, one of the ways in which the axilla, which is under the armpit, is biopsied is from surgery, which is kind of where they cut you open and actually go in. With our FlexiPulse needle, we're able to biopsy that without surgery, and that's the needle which we are going to be using in the US. So we're launching in the US, and it's less expensive than surgery, and it's also less expensive when we consider the VacuPulse needle and its alternative to stereotactic biopsies. We get improved quality of samples, which is always better for the people in the hospital to analyze the samples, and it's a more cost-effective solution. So within Europe, where we have this kind of cost containment, it's a better overall package for those people. So I just want to go on to the market and our strategy. We have 3 key pathways that we are approaching, and number 2 I'll go into, which is the US. But at the moment we have ongoing commercialization efforts in Europe, where we're evaluating the product together with over 30 centers. And in 2022 we had some symbolic sales. We've faced some delays with the product, and I'll go on to that a bit later. But we have, as I mentioned in the first slide, a highly skilled sales force with over 80 years of experience from large medtech and pharma, such as Bayer, Takeda, and Daiichi Sankyo. And the focus here in Europe really was on the development of the relationships with the KOLs and the reference clinics. As we are entering the US will very much look on Europe and those KOLs in order to see the value proposition of the product. I'll move to China, but I'll go back to the US, which is number 2 in the next slide. And then after the US, we plan to enter China in 2024. And the Chinese regulatory body very much looks towards the FDA for how the commercialization went. So on to the US. So in September, we were approved by the FDA, which was exciting, and it was a long time coming. I think we all expected some delays because of obviously the pressure on government agencies with COVID and the lack of resources. However, with the really strong case that we put forwards in the FDA approval, we managed to get it through in just over 6 months, which is amazing. And what we're going to focus on is the FlexiPulse needle. And this needle, I mentioned earlier, we've had some delays in our product, but with the FlexiPulse needle, we actually don't have any delays, so that's ready to go. And we'll focus on leading breast surgeons to start off with. And the reason why we're doing this is because they have a more assertive attitude towards purchasing. And we will afterwards launch the VacuPulse needle to replace the stereotactic biopsies. And stereotactic biopsies use a huge machine, which is very, very expensive. So we hope to come in under that and be a good alternative to the stereotactic. And we'll focus there on radiologists. And on the right of the slide here, we've just got a couple of points, information points. And yeah, I mean, the global breast biopsy market is expected to be worth around 1.7 billion in 2025. A very, very big market. And globally, more than 2.3 million women in the world are diagnosed with breast cancer each year. And in the US, breast cancer is one of the leading causes of cancer-related death in women. And this is second only to lung cancer. Axillary biopsies carried out in the US are approximately 300,000, and that's what we're targeting first. In the US, we've been very careful when we've kind of developed this strategy of commercialization to have people on the ground, but to not load up the business with excuse me, unnecessary costs. So we have a few very skilled people working towards the US market. The first is Magnus Precht, and he's been on board for several months now, developing a strategy and the go-to-market over there. More recently, we have appointed Matt Colpoys as the CEO of NeoDynamics, Inc. Matt Colpoys is based in the US and currently serves on the board of directors. He has a lot of experience within the biotech and medtech arena. Shortly before, we hired Brendan Carney as the national sales director, and Brendan Carney will be responsible, together with Matt, to introduce the product to the KOLs and to really start working with the relationship with them and the product. It's expected that at some point Brendan will build out a small but focused team over in the US, the US is a very big country, and we will work sort of narrow but deep in our approach, meaning that we will work center on center and get them up to speed before moving to the next center. On the medical affairs side, we have Anna Forsberg, and Anna was really key in getting the FDA file approved. She worked very hard on that, so kudos to Anna. And for the reimbursement support and customer service, we have recently partnered with a company called Diligent Healthcare, a very big outfit. I think they're actually based in Ireland, but they have support all over the world, and they will be very much focusing on providing support on the reimbursement side, and also a dial-in for customer support on the product. So we see that there is an increasing demand for precision biopsies. As I mentioned, the global biopsy market is expected to reach around 1.7 billion by 2025, with a strong single-digit CAGR of 8.7% during the period. And the reason why we've chosen the US as our next biggest market is because it's so large, and it represents almost 50% of the global breast biopsy market. And as they say, if you're not in the US with medtech, then you're not really anywhere. So the US is very important. And in the US, they tend to take more samples per patient, and they're not restricted on cost in the same way as Europe is. So in 2022, the US had an estimated almost 300,000 invasive and 52,000 non-invasive breast cancer cases. And it's very unfortunate to see that 1 in every 8 women in the US is expected to develop breast cancer during their lifetime. So kind of shocking statistics there. And just short of 300,000 annual number of axilla lymph node biopsies, of which 200,000 of those were open biopsies, i.e. surgery. And that's what we kind of really want to try to take and avoid, is the open biopsy, because it needs a lot of resources behind surgery. I mean, you need the operating theatre, you need many people behind it. And what we want to try to do is take that type of biopsy and bring it sort of into the doctor's office, as it were. And our Pulse technology, we are focusing on breast cancer, but that being said, it's not the only thing we're focusing on. There are other indications where we see a need for precision biopsies, and one of the big ones is prostate cancer. The current methodology of taking a biopsy from the prostate is not only invasive, it comes with additional risks such as infections and sepsis. So we believe that our technology can be used to take biopsies in a slightly different way that would help reduce or eliminate those risks. And another potential use of our technology is the delivery of nano-formulated slow-release cytotoxic drugs, which can actually be administered directly into the suspected tumor. And our technology can be used for a whole host of other specific organs, such as the liver and the neck and the head and things like that. So we're well positioned for the next stage after we commercialize in the US with the breast. And just to kind of wrap it up, our vision is to make the Pulse technology the standard of care for all ultrasound guided biopsies, and that's irrespective of organ. So thank you very much.
You're welcome, Aaron. And with that said, we open up for questions, and there's already a couple of questions coming in here. But first, I would like to ask you, Aaron, could you elaborate a little more on your US strategy? I know you have some really good slides in there, but are you, so you told us that you're targeting the surgeons, you're targeting the armpit, where there's an unmet need today, and with the value proposition also that you actually face, focusing on that area. With the small organization you have in place, how many clinics are you able to address, and what kind of market are you going for?
Yeah, I mean, With the small team we have, I mean, it's reasonable to assume that we would be targeting a handful of clinics, and I would say in the single-digit number before, we move on. And as I mentioned, it's important for us to get each clinic up and running properly before we move on. So our strategy has always been to work narrow and deep, in that we will work and focus on quality rather than quantity. Our product and our strategy has never been a volume-driven one. It's been a price-driven one. And that's where we see our first steps into the US. That being said, after that, if there is, an exponential uptick in demand for the product, then we will adjust our activities and our strategy accordingly. And that's where we will either decide to invest more in the headcount side, or there's other ways to kind of lead that commercialization, whether that be a partnership or some sort of distribution. So we're very open to see how it develops.
Thanks, Aaron. A little more about the market. There's a question here coming up. How big a share of the market are you expected to take? And of course, it's early days.
All of it.
Yes, of course. But if you look into the armpit market, where you have a very strong value proposition, and you mentioned around 200,000 cases, is it to experience a good growth case? Is it 5% or 20%? What are we talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's high single digits, and the total addressable market, as I outlined, is 50% of 1.7 million, so around $840 million. So that's the total addressable market, and within that, obviously, you've got different parts of the biopsy market, but the 300,000 cases is where we're going for, and I would say that, yeah, high single digit, low double digits market share on that.
Yeah, and now you go full commercial next year. When do you expect to see your first sales coming in, Aaron? Do you have any guesstimates on that?
Yeah, I mean, ideally we would like to see first sales in Q1, but we have to be mindful that this type of setup, where we have a small amount of resources, it takes time. The good thing is that we have leverage from the clinical work we've done in Europe, and also the relationships we've built with the KOLs and the clinicians here in Europe. And as big as the world is, within our space, they all do talk. So we expect that will be very useful for us, in that when it comes to actually gaining the kind of confidence within the surgeons to use this, they will look to what we've already done in Europe, which I think is very positive.
Yeah, and there's a question about Europe as well. With your organization in place, both in US and Europe, of course, is it realistic to expect that you can drive both markets? I know you have a path for both markets. Could you please address that one? Yeah,
I mean, we already have headcount in place in both markets, so it's not that we need to scale up. Obviously, in the US, we need to scale up, but in Europe, we have the resources already. So there won't be any, I would say, scaling up of costs in Europe. We have key account managers placed in Sweden, Germany, and the UK, and they're doing a fantastic job to negotiate and to work with the clinicians, especially with the delays we've faced. So the demand is, I mean, I'm pleased and excited to say the demand is there. I touched on the delays in the product. And the reason why we've had the delays is because we've listened to our customers, and we've listened to what they've had to say about the product. And for us, it's important to introduce those incremental improvements to the product, before we continue to roll them out. I think that's quite a key part of how we work together on the quality side.
And you mentioned also in the presentation, and I think most investors know that the structural differences between Europe and the US market is why it's two different stories, of course. But in Europe, you also experience these high-profile clinics that are actually the ones you are addressing, as I remember.
Yeah, exactly. University clinics and also some specific reference centers. Europe has been, Europe is really where we started. And these are very much part of the foundation of the strategy of how we expand globally. There's some very important and high profile KOLs and reference centers in Europe that we've successfully onboarded, and we're working with them with pilot studies. So yeah, Europe is where we started, and it's a very important market for us in addition to the US.
Well, then there's a question about capital situation, and that's one issue that faces the whole industry, unfortunately.
Yes.
But could you very briefly update us on your situation, Aaron?
Yes, I mean.
Okay.
Sorry, excuse me. The capital situation. Yes. So, as you mentioned, I mean, the situation globally is that it's becoming more and more difficult to raise capital. I think we're under no illusion there. And as a 100% equity financed business, we go through these capital raises, I would say, quite frequently. That being said, I mean, the calls that I've been having around capital raising and our strategy to it, I was speaking to somebody who said something quite poignant. They said that if you have a good product, you will always be able to raise capital. And I very much believe that that's the situation in our case. I'm working, and I always look out for ways in which to finance the business in a sustainable and long-term way. Obviously, I can't go into any details about what we're working on and how we're working, but all I can say is that I'm very excited about the US and what we can do there.
Thanks a lot, Aaron. And then one final question here. Now you mentioned Europe is already in place. You have US you target in 2023 for full commercialization. Next on agenda, is that the China strategy, or is it other indications? And what is your go-to-market strategy in China?
Yeah, it's both. And it kind of seems because I was asked about resources earlier and how you manage your resource side. But what I can say is that it's both. I mean, we want to be able to continue to develop our product whilst going to new markets. But we do it in a very systematic manner. We don't obviously. It's important not to overstretch ourselves with our resources, but we move, we plan, we decide, and we move, we plan, we decide, and throughout that process, we make sure that we hit our objectives properly. That being said, we will be developing new indications along the way. That's a very important part of our business model. And then when it comes to China, our go-to-market strategy, we're still developing it. I mean, we have a good network of contacts in China that will help us to, I would say, get into China, because China's, I mean, as you and many listeners might know, is quite a unique market in that it's very insulated. But with our contact network, we believe that we will find a good way to enter the market there.
Thanks a lot, Aaron. With that said, we are heading for 25 minutes, so we managed to go through the questions as well. And thanks for all the nice questions from the audience. And with that said, I will hand over the word to the next company. Enjoy your day, Aaron, and audience as well.
Thank you, Klaus.